I told you to stay away from my property. I begged you to leave my family alone.
The afternoon sun cast dancing reflections across the crystal-clear water of Sarah Martinez's backyard pool, and stepped back to admire her handiwork. The pool party had been planned for Wixa casual gathering to celebrate her promotion to regional sales, direct her and introduce herself properly to the neighbors she'd barely spoken to in the 6 months. Since moving to Willow Creek Estates, "Mom, the music's too loud," called her daughter Emma from the sliding glass doors. "That's hardly death metal." Sarah laughed, adjusting the outdoor speakers. "Besides, Mrs. Peterson asked me to keep it down after 7. We've got 3 hours." The first guests began arriving at 4:30. Sharp the Hendersons from next door with their twin boys, the Patels from across the street carrying homemade samosas, and Mike Chen from 2 houses down with his famous 7-layer dip. Sarah had worried about the turnout, but within an hour, her backyard buzzed with conversation and laughter. She was refilling the chip bowls when she noticed the woman standing at her back gate. Karen Walsh cut an imposing figure even from a distance. Her platinum blonde hair was swept into a perfect chignon, not a strand out of place despite the humid July evening. She wore a white linen dress that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly mortgage payment, and her smile was as bright and sharp as a blade. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," Karen called out, her voice carrying the kind of refined authority that came from years of getting exactly what she wanted. "I'm Karen Walsh from Magnolia Drive. I heard music and thought I'd introduce myself." Magnolia Drive was 3 streets over, well outside the immediate neighborhood circle Sarah had been trying to cultivate, but suburban etiquette demanded politeness. Sarah unlatched the gate, immediately regretting her casual attire, simple sundress, and flip-flops that suddenly felt shabby next to Karen's effortless elegance. Karen's eyes swept across the backyard with the calculating precision of a real estate appraiser. The pause before charming lingered just long enough to suggest it wasn't entirely a compliment. Can I get you something to drink? We have margaritas, beer, wine, ... White wine would be perfect." Karen's smile never wavered, but her gaze had shifted to the pool where Emma and the Henderson twins were engaged in an increasingly aggressive game of pool volleyball. Sarah handed her a glass of Pinot Grigio and watched as Karen positioned herself strategically near the pool's edge, close enough to observe, but far enough to avoid splashing. There was something unsettling about the way she watched the teenagers, too. Intense, too focused. "Your daughter is beautiful," Karen said, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "Emma, isn't it? She has such ... potential." The comment sent an unexpected chill down Sarah's spine. "Thank you. She's a good kid. I work with young people, you know. I'm a counselor at the private academy in Riverside, St. Catherine's. Perhaps you've heard of it." Sarah had heard of St. Catherine's. The tuition was astronomical, and the rumors about their methods were ... complicated. "That must be rewarding work," Sarah said carefully. "Oh, it is, especially when you find young people who need ... guidance, direction." Karen's eyes never left Emma, who was now attempting to execute a perfect dive from the pool's edge. They need someone who understands their potential. The conversation was interrupted by a splash and a chorus of cheers as Emma executed her dive flawlessly. She surfaced near the pool's edge, her dark hair streaming behind her like a mermaid's tail. "That was amazing, sweetheart," Sarah called out, but her attention was divided. Karen had moved closer to the pool, her wine glass forgotten on the nearby table. "Emma dear," Karen called out, her voice taking on a different quality, warmer, more maternal. "That was a beautiful dive. Have you ever considered competitive swimming?" Emma paddled closer, intrigued. "I was on the team at my old school, but I haven't found a good program here yet." "Well, you're in luck. St. Catherine's has one of the most prestigious aquatic programs in the state. We're always looking for talented young women like yourself." Sarah felt her maternal instincts flare. "That's very kind of you, but Emma's settled into her new school. She's happy there." Karen's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, I just hate to see talent go to waste. Emma has such ... special qualities." The way she said special made Sarah's skin crawl. She was about to change the subject when Emma spoke up. "What kind of special qualities?" Karen leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Well, for one thing, you have natural leadership abilities. I can see it in how the other children look up to you, and you're not afraid to take risks. That dive proved that. But most importantly, you have the kind of discipline that's rare in young people today. Sarah watched in growing alarm as her daughter hung on every word. Emma had always been susceptible to adult attention, especially from women who reminded her of the confident, successful mother she sometimes felt Sarah wasn't. Just a look around. I'd love to give you a personal tour, Karen replied, her hand moving to rest on the pool's edge, inches from where Emma floated. We could start with the athletic facilities. The pool is Olympic-sized, and the coaching staff is world-class. Emma, why don't you go check on the snacks? Sarah interjected, her voice sharper than she'd intended. I think we're running low. On everything. Emma's face fell, but she obediently climbed out of the pool. As she walked toward the house, dripping water across the deck, Karen's eyes followed her every movement. That's admirable, but sometimes parents can be ... overprotective. It's important to let children spread their wings. I'm perfectly comfortable with Emma's current situation, Sarah replied, her tone making it clear the subject was closed. Karen's smile became predatory. Of course you are. Before you know it, they're making their own decisions about where they want to go, who they want to be with. She paused, letting the implications sink in. It's important to maintain influence while you still can. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, but before she could respond, Mike Chen approached with his usual jovial demeanor. Ladies, how are we? Doing over here, Sarah. This party is fantastic. And Karen, right? I don't think we've met. Karen's entire demeanor shifted like a switch being flipped. The intensity vanished, replaced by the kind of polished charm that made people instantly comfortable. Karen Walsh. I was just telling Sarah, what a lovely home she has, and what a remarkable daughter. That's exactly what I was saying, Karen replied, her eyes finding Sarah's. Across the conversation, such a shame to waste natural talent. The woman had a way of inserting herself into conversations, of positioning herself wherever Emma happened to be. Emma helped serve food. Karen was there to compliment her hospitality. When Emma laughed at something one of the other teenagers said, Karen was there to share in the moment. It was subtle, too subtle for anyone else to notice. But Sarah had developed the hyper-vigilant instincts that came with single parenthood, and every alarm bell in her head was ringing. As the sun began to set and the party wound down, guests started making their departures. Thank you so much for including me, she said, as Sarah walked her to the gate. I'm sure we will, Sarah replied politely, though she was already mentally planning ways to avoid future encounters. Karen paused at the gate, her hand resting on the latch. You know, Sarah, I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about Emma being happy at her current school. Yes, it's just that happiness isn't always the same as fulfillment. Sometimes, we need to push ourselves or allow others to push reach our full potential. Her voice had taken on that same intimate quality from earlier. I'd hate to see Emma look back in 10 years and wonder what might have been. Sarah's jaw tightened. I think Emma will be just fine. Of course she will, with the right guidance. Karen's smile was radiant and terrifying. Well, good night. Sarah, I hope you sleep well. As Karen walked away, her heels clicking against the sidewalk in a rhythm that sounded almost like a countdown. Sarah realized she'd made a terrible mistake. Sarah's fingers hovered over her phone trying to be a good neighbor. That morning, she'd opened her home. Karen's business card balanced against her coffee mug. She just didn't like a taunt. Necessary components of a private school application that should have been impossible to obtain without parental consent. Mom, you're doing that thing again, Emma said, sliding into the kitchen chair across from her. She was already dressed for her summer job at the local rec center, her lifeguard certification dangling from a lanyard around her neck. What thing? The thing where you stare at something like it's personally offended you. Emma grabbed a banana from the fruit bowl. What's got you so worked up? Sarah folded the St. Catherine's brochure and slipped it into her purse. Just work stuff. You know how it is? But Emma had inherited her mother's intuition, and her dark eyes narrowed with suspicion. This is about that lady from the party, isn't it? Karen something. Walsh, Sarah said before she could stop herself. Right, she was weird mom, like really weird. The way she kept watching everyone swim, asking all those questions about school and grades and stuff. Emma paused, her expression growing more serious. She asked me about you, too. Sarah's coffee mug hit the counter harder than intended. What kind of questions? Like where you worked? If you dated anyone? If we had family nearby? I thought maybe she was just being friendly. But now, ... double quotes, Emma shrugged. I don't know. Something felt off. The relief that flooded through Sarah was immediate and intense. Emma's instincts were intact. She'd sensed the danger to... I'm glad you trust your gut about people. That's an important skill. So what are you going to do about her? Sarah considered her options. Withdrawn, but something told her that Karen Walsh wasn't the type to be deterred by rational approaches. I'm going to handle it, she said finally. Don't worry about it. Emma stood up, slinging her lifeguard bag over her shoulder. Just ... be careful, okay? There was something about the way she looked at me, like she was planning something. After Emma left for work, Sarah sat in her kitchen, staring at Karen's business card. The woman's credentials were impeccable: a master's degree in adolescent psychology from Columbia, 15 years of experience in private education, glowing recommendations from previous employers. But Sarah had learned that impressive resumes could hide dangerous people. She dialed the number before she could lose her nerve. St. Catherine's Academy, Karen Walsh speaking. The voice was crisp, professional, with none of the predatory warmth from the night before. Sarah almost hung up, but then she thought about Emma's worried expression and forced herself to speak. This is Sarah Martinez. We met at my pool party yesterday. Sarah, how wonderful to hear from you. I was hoping you'd call. The warmth returned instantly, calculated and cloying. I trust you received the materials I left for Emma. About that there's been a misunderstanding. I didn't authorize you to submit an application for my daughter. A pause. When Karen spoke again, her voice had an edge that made Sarah's skin crawl. I'm sorry, I thought I was being helpful. Emma expressed such interest in our program, and with her obvious talent, I didn't want her to miss the opportunity. Emma is 15. She can't express interest in anything without my permission. Of course not. But Sarah, may I be frank with you? I've been working with adolescents for a long time, and I can see when a young person is underserved by their current situation. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. What exactly are you implying? Nothing negative, I assure you. You're clearly a devoted mother. But Emma is exceptional, and exceptional children need exceptional opportunities. Public school can only do so much, especially for a girl with her particular ... vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities: single-parent household, recent relocation. Father absent from the picture. These are all factors that can impact a child's development. Emma is at a crucial age where the right guidance could make all the difference in her future. Sarah felt her temper flare. You don't know anything about my daughter or our family. I know more than you think. Karen's voice dropped to an intimate whisper. I know that Emma craves structure and authority. I know she's looking for strong female role models. I know she's academically gifted but emotionally vulnerable. These aren't criticisms, Sarah. They're observations from someone who specializes in helping children like Emma reach their full potential. Children like Emma, bright, talented, hungry for approval from adults who understand their worth. Emma responded to me immediately yesterday. You notice? She lit up when I praised her diving, when I acknowledged her leadership qualities. That's not coincidence, that's recognition. Sarah's free hand was shaking now. I want you to withdraw Emma's application immediately. I'm afraid I can't do that. Once an application is submitted, it goes through our standard review process. But Sarah, I hope you'll reconsider. Emma deserves better than what? Than being held back by someone who's afraid of her success. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, her heart hammering against her ribs. The conversation had been a masterclass in manipulation. Karen had made her feel like an inadequate mother while positioning herself as Emma's savior, all while gathering information about their family dynamics. She needed to know more about Karen Walsh. 20 minutes later, Sarah was parked outside St. Catherine's Academy, a sprawling campus of red brick buildings and manicured lawns that screamed old money and older traditions. The main office was decorated with oil paintings of distinguished alumni and trophy cases filled with academic awards. "I'd like to speak with the headmaster," Sarah told the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "Dr. Pemberton is in meetings all morning. Perhaps I could help you with something. It's about Karen Walsh. I have some concerns about her interactions with my daughter." The receptionist's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, I see. "I ask what kind of concerns?" Sarah explained the situation as calmly as possible, but she could see the woman's discomfort growing with each detail. "That's unusual," the receptionist said finally. "Ms. Walsh is very dedicated to her students, but submitting an application without parental consent is definitely not standard procedure." "Has this happened before?" The woman hesitated, glancing toward the closed office doors. "I really think you should speak with Dr. Pemberton. He'll be available after lunch." 2:00. Sarah sensed there was more to the story, but she accepted the appointment and left feeling more unsettled than before. The receptionist's reaction suggested that Karen's behavior wasn't entirely surprising, which raised disturbing questions about what the school might already know about her methods. She was walking to her car when she heard someone call her name, Mrs. Martinez. Sarah turned to see a girl of about 17 approaching her, tall, willowy, with a kind of nervous energy that suggested she was working up the courage to say something important. "Yes, I'm Jessica Chen. I go to school here." The girl glanced around nervously. "I heard you asking about Ms. Walsh. Do you know her?" "She was my counselor last year." Jessica's voice dropped to a whisper. "Look, I probably shouldn't be talking to you, but if she's interested in your daughter, you need to be careful." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean? She has favorites. Girls who remind her of herself when she was young. Or girls she thinks have potential. She calls them her special projects." Jessica's hands were shaking now. "She gets really involved in their lives. Like, really involved. How involved? She finds out everything about them, their families, their friends, their problems. She positions herself as the person who really understands them, who can help them be their best selves. And at first, it feels amazing, like someone finally sees who you really are." Sarah's mouth went dry. "What happens then?" "She starts making suggestions. Small things. At first, maybe you should join this club. Maybe you should reconsider that. Friendship. Maybe your parents don't understand your potential the way she does. And before you know it, she's making decisions for you. About your classes, your activities, who you spend time with. Did you report this to the administration?" Jessica laughed bitterly. "She's careful. Nothing she does is technically inappropriate. She never crosses any obvious lines, but she isolates you from your support system and makes you dependent on her approval. By the time you realize what's happening, you're in too deep." "What made you realize?" "She wanted me to spend the summer at her house. Said it would be good for my college applications if I helped her with research. My parents thought it was a great opportunity." Jessica's voice was barely audible now, but something about the way she talked about it, ... It felt wrong. Like she was more excited about having me there than about the actual work. Sarah felt sick. "What did you do?" "I transferred schools. My parents still don't understand why I gave up such a good opportunity, but I couldn't stay. She still texts me sometimes, checking in, asking how I'm doing. She says she misses our talks." "Jessica, would you be willing to speak with the..." Sarah arrived at the rec center to find Emma teaching a group of 18-year-olds how to float on their backs, her voice patient and encouraging as she guided small hands through the motions. The normalcy of the scene, children laughing, water splashing, the smell of chlorine and sunscreen felt surreal against the backdrop of what Sarah now knew about Karen Walsh. "It's Mom." Emma waved from the pool's edge, then said something to her supervisor before climbing out. "You look like you've seen a ghost. We need to talk, privately." They found a quiet corner of the staff break room, and Sarah told Emma everything about the unauthorized application, the phone call, Jessica's warning, and most importantly, about Karen's true nature. Emma listened in stunned silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. When Sarah finished, her daughter was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. "So when she came here this morning, ... double quotes, Emma said slowly, "tell me exactly what happened." "She showed up right after we opened, said she was considering the rec center for some of her students and wanted to observe our programs." Emma's voice was small now, younger than her 15 years. "She watched me teach the kids' class, took notes, asked questions about my technique. Sarah felt her jaw clench. What kind of questions? About how I related to the children, how I handled discipline, whether I enjoyed working with kids. She said I had a natural gift for connecting with young people. Emma looked up at her mother with frightened eyes. She said most teenagers, my age, were too self-absorbed to care about others, but that I was different, special. The word special sent a chill through Sarah's veins. What else? She asked about my plans for the summer, whether I got bored just working here. When I said sometimes, she suggested I might enjoy volunteering with her youth mentorship program. She said she worked with girls who reminded her of herself at my age, smart, ambitious, but stuck in situations that didn't challenge them, hands clenched into fists. Karen was following her playbook exactly: isolate, flatter, then present herself as the solution to problems she'd helped create. She wants to take me to lunch tomorrow, Emma continued. At that fancy place, downtown, Meridian. She said we could discuss opportunities that might interest me. You're not going? I wasn't planning to. Not after what you just told me. Emma's voice strengthened. But Mom, what if she doesn't take no for an answer? What if she keeps showing up here, at school, at our house? It was a valid concern. Sarah had seen Karen's persistence firsthand, and Jessica's warning about her not giving up easily echoed in her mind. But she also knew that showing fear would only encourage someone like Karen. Then we document everything, every interaction, every attempt at contact. We build a case. A case for what? Harassment, stalking, whatever we need to keep her away from you. Emma nodded, but Sarah could see the fear in her daughter's eyes. They were dealing with someone who understood the law, who knew exactly how far she could push without crossing legal lines. Sarah's phone buzzed with another text. Emma seemed tired today. Perhaps she's not getting enough support at home. I'd love to help. The message was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive manipulation, expressing concern, while subtly criticizing Sarah's parenting, all while positioning Karen as the caring adult who could provide what Emma needed. Sarah showed Emma the message, watching her daughter's face harden with anger. She's trying to make you feel like a bad mom, Emma said. That's sick. That's exactly what she's doing, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. They were interrupted by Emma's supervisor, a college-aged guy named Tyler, who managed the pool programs. Hey, Emma, that woman from this morning called. She wants to set up a meeting with you tomorrow to discuss some kind of internship opportunity. She seemed pretty insistent. Sarah and Emma exchanged glances. Karen was escalating, using multiple contact points to increase pressure. Tell her Emma's not available, Sarah said firmly, and if she calls again, please refer her to me. Tyler looked confused but nodded. Sure thing. Everything okay? Just a misunderstanding, Sarah replied, though her mind was already working on their next move. That evening, Sarah sat in her home office, researching everything she could find. About Karen Walsh, the woman's professional credentials were impeccable, but Sarah had learned to look beyond the surface. She searched for news articles, social media posts, anything that might reveal a pattern of behavior. What she found was disturbing in its absence. Karen's digital footprint was carefully curated professional photos, educational accomplishments, glowing testimonials from colleagues, but there were no personal posts, no casual interactions, no glimpse into her life outside of work. It was the online presence of someone who understood the importance of controlling their image. Sarah was about to give up when she found a brief mention in a local newspaper from Karen's previous job in Connecticut. It was buried in a larger article about budget cuts at private schools. But one line caught her attention. The departure of guidance counselor Karen Walsh coincided with several families transferring their children to other institutions. The school officials declined to comment on any connection. It wasn't much, but it suggested a pattern. Sarah made a note to dig deeper into Karen's employment history. Her research was interrupted by a knock at the front door. Through the peephole, she saw a delivery driver holding a large floral arrangement. Sarah Martinez, he asked when she opened the door. Yes, delivery for you. Sarah accepted the flowers with growing dread. The arrangement was expensive white roses and lilies in a crystal vase that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. The card was handwritten in elegant script for a mother who clearly loves her daughter. I hope we can work together to ensure Emma's bright future. The message was perfectly crafted to appear thoughtful while being deeply threatening. Karen was demonstrating that she knew where Sarah lived, that she had disposable income, and that she considered their conflict a negotiation rather than a boundary. Sarah called Emma downstairs to see the flowers. "That's creepy," Emma said immediately. "Like really creepy. She's trying to buy you off. Or intimidate me. Maybe both." Emma picked up the card and read it again. The way she writes. "It's like she thinks she's doing us a favor, like we should be grateful for her attention." Sarah's phone rang. Karen's name appeared on the caller ID. "Don't answer it," Emma said quickly. But Sarah was tired of being reactive. She accepted the call and put it on speaker. "Hello, Karen. Sarah. I hope you received my flowers. I wanted to thank you for such a lovely evening at your pool party. What do you want?" "I'm calling about Emma's lunch tomorrow. I made reservations at Meridian for noon. It's such a wonderful opportunity for her to learn about Emma won't be having lunch with you tomorrow or any other day." A pause. When Karen spoke again, her voice had lost its manufactured warmth. "I'm sorry to hear that. I think you're making a mistake." "The only mistake I made was inviting you into my home. Sarah, I understand that you're feeling protective. It's natural for mothers to feel threatened when someone else recognizes their child's potential. But Emma is at a crucial age where the wrong decisions could impact her entire future." "Are you threatening my daughter?" "I'm expressing concern for her development. Emma is exceptional, but she needs guidance from someone who understands exceptional children, someone who can help her navigate the challenges ahead." Sarah felt her temper rising. "You mean someone like you?" "I mean someone with experience, training, and resources. Someone who can offer her opportunities that might not otherwise be available. And if I refuse, then you're limiting your daughter's potential, but I'm hoping you'll reconsider. Emma deserves better than being held back by fear." The line went dead. Sarah and Emma stared at each other, both shaken by the barely concealed threat in Karen's words. "She's not going to stop," Emma said quietly. "No, she's not, but neither are we." Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She called the police. Officer Martinez, no relation despite the shared surname, was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She listened patiently as Sarah explained the situation, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. "Has she made any explicit threats?" Officer Martinez asked. "Not exactly. Everything she says is carefully worded to sound concerned rather than threatening." "Has she attempted any physical contact with your daughter?" "No, but she's showing up at Emma's workplace, sending gifts, trying to arrange private meetings. She submitted a school application without my permission, using information she shouldn't have had access to." Officer Martinez frowned. "The school application is concerning. How did she obtain your daughter's personal information?" "I don't know. That's what worries me. I can file a report and have someone speak with her about backing off, but without explicit threats or physical contact, it's hard to pursue harassment charges." Sarah felt frustrated but not surprised. Karen was too smart to leave herself legally vulnerable. "What would you recommend?" she asked. "Keep records of all contact attempts, save all messages, report any escalation immediately, and trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, call us." After Officer Martinez left, Sarah felt marginally better, at least they're con. Sarah's hands trembled as she photographed the rose and note from every angle, her phone's camera flash illuminating the violation of their sanctuary. Emma stood in the doorway, her face pale with a mixture of fear and rage that made her look older than her 15 years. "She was in my room," Emma whispered. "While I was sleeping, she was in here." Sarah called 911 immediately. This time, the response was different. Breaking and entering was a felony, regardless of Karen's psychological games. Within 20 minutes, their house was swarming with police officers, crime scene technicians, and Detective Ray Castellanos, a soft-spoken man with sharp eyes who specialized in stalking cases. "Tell me everything from the beginning," Detective Castellanos said, settling into their living room with a notepad and recorder. Sarah recounted the entire timeline: the pool party, the unauthorized application, the escalating contact, Jessica's warnings about Karen's pattern of behavior. Detective Castellanos listened without interruption, occasionally making notes or asking for clarification. "You said she obtained your daughter's personal information for the school application. Do you have any idea how?" "No, but I've been thinking about that. The only place that would have Emma's complete academic and medical records would be her previous school in Phoenix. We'll need to contact them. This level of information gathering suggests she's done this before, probably. Successfully, Detective Castellanos turned to Emma. I need you to think carefully about every interaction you've had with Ms. Walsh. Did she ever ask you specific questions about your family, your home, your routines? Emma nodded slowly. She asked about what time I got home from work, whether my mom worked late, if we had security systems. I thought she was just making conversation. She was gathering intelligence, the detective said grimly. Professional stalkers are methodical. They study their target's patterns before making their move. Professional stalkers? Sarah felt sick. Ms. Walsh's behavior suggests this isn't her first time. The psychological manipulation, the careful legal positioning, the systematic escalation. These are learned behaviors. We're going to investigate her background thoroughly. 2 hours later, after the crime scene team had finished processing Emma's room and the investigators had departed, Sarah and Emma sat in their kitchen trying to process what had happened. The house felt different, now violated, unsafe, no longer the refuge it had been. We can't stay here tonight, Sarah said. Maybe not for a while. Where will we go? I'll call your Aunt Maria. We can stay with her until this is resolved. But before Sarah could make the call, Detective Castellanos returned with information that changed everything. We ran Karen Walsh's background, he said, his expression grim. She's had 3 previous jobs in 3 different states. Each time, she left under circumstances involving inappropriate relationships with students. No formal charges were ever filed, but the pattern is unmistakable. Why wasn't she prosecuted? Because she's careful. She never crosses obvious lines, never leaves clear evidence. But we found something else too. Families in Connecticut filed restraining orders against her. Both cases involved teenage daughters who'd caught her attention. Sarah felt vindicated and terrified simultaneously. What happened to those families? That's where it gets interesting. In both cases, the families eventually dropped the restraining orders and moved away. We're trying to contact them now, moved away. Karen Walsh doesn't just give up when she wants something. She escalates until families feel they have no choice but to relocate. It's a pattern of systematic harassment disguised as professional. Concerned, Emma grabbed her mother's hand. She's trying to force us to move. Not if I can help it, Detective Castellano said. We have enough evidence now to arrest her for breaking and entering. That should buy us some time to build a stronger case. But when police arrived at St. Catherine's Academy to arrest Karen Walsh, they discovered she'd called in sick that morning. Her apartment was empty, her car was gone, and according to her neighbors, she'd left before dawn with several suitcases. Karen Walsh had vanished. She knew we'd find the evidence. Detective Castellanos explained over the phone. She probably planned this as her endgame from the beginning. Create enough pressure to force you to leave, then disappear before facing consequences. So she's gone, just like that, for now. But people like Karen don't change their patterns. Icily, she surfaced somewhere else with a new identity, targeting a new family. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and frustration. Emma was safe, but Karen had escaped justice. Worse, she was free to repeat her predatory behavior with another. Unsuspecting family. That afternoon, Sarah's phone rang with a call from Connecticut. The caller identified herself as Margaret Shunjessica's mother. Detective Castellanos gave me your number, Margaret said. I heard about what happened with Karen Walsh. I wanted to call because I owe you an apology. I don't. Understand? My daughter Jessica told you about Karen's methods, but she didn't tell you everything. She was afraid, and I was too embarrassed. Margaret's voice cracked with emotion. Karen didn't just manipulate Jessica academically. She convinced her to run away from home. Sarah's blood ran cold. It started the same way: special attention, private meetings, promises of better opportunities. But when Jessica began pulling away from us, when she started questioning everything we told her, Karen escalated. She convinced Jessica that we were holding her back, that she could provide the support and guidance Jessica really needed. How far did it go? Jessica disappeared for 3 days. We found her at Karen's house, completely convinced that we were the problem. Karen had spent those 3 days programming her to believe that traditional families were destructive to exceptional children. Sarah felt sick. How did you get her back? Deprogramming, we had to hire a specialist who works with cult victims. It took months for Jessica to understand how she'd been manipulated. Even now, she struggles with trusting her own judgment. Is that why you moved? We had to. Karen made our lives impossible. She'd show up at Jessica's school, our house, my workplace. She filed complaints with Child Protective Services, claiming we were emotionally abusing Jessica. She turned our entire community against us. Margaret's voice was bitter now. The restraining order was useless. She always stayed just within legal boundaries while making our lives hell. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be careful. Karen Walsh is more dangerous than you realize, and she's not done with your family. What do you mean she's gone? She's disappeared before. When the pressure gets too intense, she vanishes for a while. But she always comes back to finish what she started. Especially when someone fights back the way you did. How long? Could be weeks, could be months, but she'll be back, probably. With a new identity and a more carefully planned approach, she sees families like ours as challenges to be conquered. After Margaret hung up, Sarah sat in her kitchen staring at her phone, the full scope of what they'd faced beginning to sink in. Karen Walsh wasn't just a troubled educator with boundary issues. She was a serial predator who used her professional credentials and psychological training to systematically destroy families. And according to Margaret Chen, she wasn't finished. With them, Sarah called Emma down from her room and told her about the conversation with Margaret. So, even though she's gone, we're not safe? Emma asked. I don't know, but we're going to be prepared. That evening, Sarah took steps she'd never imagined needing. She contacted a security company about installing a comprehensive system. She enrolled Emma in self-defense classes. She spoke with a lawyer about changing their names and relocating. But most importantly, she began documenting everything they'd learned about Karen Walsh methods. Her pattern of targeting families, the systematic way she destroyed lives. If Karen returned, Sarah would be ready. And if she didn't, Sarah would make sure the information reached other potential victims. 3 weeks later, just as Sarah was beginning to believe they might be safe, Emma came home from her summer job. With a troubling report, there was a woman at the rec center today asking about me, Emma said, her voice tight with anxiety. She said she was a social worker, investigating reports of teens working in unsafe conditions. Sarah's heart sank. What did she look like? Different from Karen? Shorter? Brunette? Older? But something about her felt familiar. The way she asked questions, the way she looked at me, like she was studying me. What kind of questions? About my home life, whether I felt supported by my family, if I had access to proper guidance and opportunities. She said she'd heard I was exceptionally mature for my age and wondered if I was being challenged appropriately. Sarah felt the familiar chill of recognition. The words were different, but the approach was identical to Karen's initial contact. Did she leave a name? Dr. Patricia Brennan. She gave me her card and said she'd like to meet with me and my mother to discuss some programs that might interest me. Emma handed Sarah a business card. The credentials looked legitimate, but Sarah had learned not to trust appearances. She photographed the card and immediately called Detective Castellanos. We'll run the name and see if we can verify her identity, he said. But my gut says you're right to be suspicious. Karen Walsh is smart enough to create a new